Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you an anthology horror film, a Christmas horror story. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a shot of the snowy mountains, which eventually leads us to a giant castle on Christmas Eve. This happens to be the home of Santa Claus, but he's shown to be in distress with a slash on his face. Suddenly, Santa hears some monster sounds coming from the gates and calls out to the monster to face him. That's when the gates break open and a bright light shines on Santa's face. Now we're taken to 12 hours earlier, where an old DJ is hosting a radio show. He talks to his listeners about how he loves Christmas, but his partner named Grumpy doesn't feel the same way and walks out of the studio because he's been working overtime. DJ doesn't care about Grumpy, so he takes out some bottles of alcohol and gets ready for a very Merry Christmas. Now, DJ presents us with multiple horror stories that are seemingly intertwined with each other. First off, we meet a group of teenagers, Babe, Nerd, and Hunk, who are checking out a clip of a year-old murder that appears to be a ritual. Out of the two victims that were killed, one is revealed to be DJ's grandson. In the clip, a cop investigates the scene and hears something suspicious, after which he starts humming a song. However, he gets jump scared by the second dead body, and the teens get a double jump scare when their friend, Redhead, abruptly appears with her colored head. Redhead and Hunk exchange hormones, rather than greetings, while Nerd watches them with his nerdy jealousy. The teens are planning to break into their school because the ritual murder had actually occurred in its basement. However, Redhead cannot join them because she's going on a family trip with her parents and little brother. We see Redhead's family passing another family on the road, and it turns out to be Cop with his bald wife and son. Cop convinces his son to steal a Christmas tree from a restricted area, even though bald wife doesn't like this plan. At night, the three teenagers break into their school and start recording their journey with Babe acting as the host. Suddenly, they hear their shady headmaster talking to someone on the phone, so they hide behind a door leading to the basement. The headmaster suspects nothing, so the teens walk into the basement. Now, Redhead's family reaches her aunt's giant mansion, but her aunt doesn't look too thrilled about it. She quickly scolds her brother, who is messing with a Krampus figurine, and warns him against touching any of her valuable items. The aunt's creepy caretaker walks into the room and tells the little boy about how dangerous Krampus is, but the boy intentionally knocks down the figurine and breaks it. The aunt is shocked to see this, so she orders Redhead and her family to get out of her mansion as soon as possible. Now we see Santa's workhouse, where the elves are working overtime to make all the toys for his Christmas journey. Santa's wife comes with cookies to give the elves a break, but a suspicious elf named Creep denies her offer. She tries to convince Creep to have a cookie, but this time, Creep abuses her, and then he accidentally chops his own hand. This surprisingly leads to his death, and Santa gets confused because elves are not known to die. Now, Cop and Bald Wife drag the tree that they chopped down, but they can't find their son. They go looking around for him, and a tense sequence follows. Cop notices an entrance into a tree and checks it out, but he is jump scared by his son, who comes out of the entrance. Something seems wrong with the son, but Bald Wife tells Cop that they should leave before getting caught. The family gets back into their car, but the owner of the land watches them from a distance. Back to the teens, they continue looking around the basement and eventually come across the murder room where the victims were killed. The teens investigate the room, but they are also being watched by a ghost who looks like a teenage girl. Meanwhile, Redhead's family argues with each other over getting kicked out of the aunt's mansion, but then they notice a mysterious beast on the road, causing them to get into an accident. Now, the teens finish recording their footage of the murder room, after which they try to get out of the basement. However, they've been locked inside and aren't able to reach anyone via cell phone. While the teens try to figure a way out of the basement, Cop and Bald Wife tell their son to eat his dinner. Something seems off about the boy, who eats way too much spaghetti. Cop tries to get his attention, but is attacked by his son, so he gets angry and is about to whack him. However, Bald Wife tells Cop to be calm, and then she tries to talk to her son, but he runs away from her. Back at Santa's castle, he locks himself and his wife inside their room because he suspects that the other elves have become infected through Creep's body. DJ abruptly takes a break to tell us about Redhead's family, which is now dead. Back to the castle, Santa suspects Krampus to be behind the zombie invasion, so he warns his wife about it, but they are suddenly attacked by Zombie Creep and other elf zombies as well. Santa fights them off with his stick and kills one of them by slashing his head wide open. Back to the teens, they continue looking around the basement for a way out. Hunk is suddenly spooked by the creepy ghost girl, but she deceptively turns out to be a statue. Suddenly, Nerd hears a humming sound, while Hunk goes to take a leak in the washroom. Babe isn't able to hear anything, but she spots the ghost girl next to Nerd and screams in horror. so Hunk rushes back to the scene. He finds Babe twitching on the floor and tries to help her along with Nerd. Now Bald Wife takes a shower and dries herself off, but then she spots her son staring at her in a creepy fashion. She tells him to get out and then goes to Cop to talk about their son. Cop only wants to wrestle his muscles with Bald Wife, but she rejects his advances and he walks away, hormone frustrated. Cop goes to the couch, but passes out while listening to Christmas songs on the radio. Later, as Bald Wife sleeps in bed, a mysterious being tries to feel her up. Bald Wife suddenly wakes up feeling suspicious, so she goes to her son's room to check up on him. She finds the window left open, so she shuts it, but we also notice that the son is actually a scary changeling monster. Back to Redhead's family, they try to find some shelter after the accident, but her dad is attacked by a mysterious presence. Dad begins to bleed, so Redhead and Mom panic, but the boy simply goes to check on the flare that his father had dropped. Unfortunately, the boy is also dragged away, after which the family hears monster noises and fears the worst. Back to Santa, he fights off more zombie elves as he enters the lift, but he is attacked by more of them. He easily kills these zombie elves, and then he goes to Zombie Creep, who is abusing him. Santa tearfully kills Creep, after which he tries to get to the bottom of this apocalypse invasion. DJ takes another break to talk to a caller, but he faces some disturbance from the other end, so he's unable to hear him. Back to Cop, he wakes up to see the Christmas presents open in front of him, so he suspects it's his son's doings. He confronts his son and even belts him for his behavior, despite Bald Wife's protests. Cop feels guilty about what he's done, so he goes to have a drink, while Bald Wife consoles her son. However, she gets a call from her landlord, who reveals that the tree her family stole from him has caused the changelings in his land to awaken. He warns Bald Wife by saying the boy with her is actually a changeling in disguise, not their real son. However, Bald Wife pays him no heed and cuts the call. Back to the teens, Hunk and Nerd have both fallen asleep, but Babe has now become possessed by the ghost girl. She awakens Hunk and leads him to the murder room, where she starts taking off her clothes. Hunk tells her he can't give her his hormones because he's dating Redhead, but then Ghost Babe uses her powers to kill Hunk with a giant cross. Meanwhile, Cop goes through some news articles, while Bald Wife does some research on changelings. Suddenly, the changeling appears next to Cop, and he senses something suspicious, so he goes to his son's room. Nothing seems off, so Cop apologizes to his son for his behavior, after which he goes back to his drink. Unfortunately, the changeling attacks Cop from the ceiling and kills him in a lengthy sequence. Bald Wife hears the commotion, so she goes downstairs, but finds her husband's dead body, much to her dismay. The changeling growls at her, so she runs away. The scene then transitions into Redhead trying to run away from Krampus with her family. They enter a church, and Redhead says they need to wait till sunrise for Krampus to disappear. However, Dad suggests confessing their sins as a way to avoid Krampus. Redhead starts immediately by saying she likes to steal. She even gives an example by showing a lighter that she recently stole. Mom thinks this is pointless because she believes that her son has been killed despite being innocent. However, Redhead reveals that she found her brother smiling after killing the family cat. Mom is heartbroken to hear this and blames her husband for not paying enough attention to their son. Things only get worse when Dad reveals that he's simply raising money every year to pay for his family because it was the only way he could be with Mom. The couple has a nice moment, but it all comes crashing down when Krampus attacks Dad with a rope and drags him away. Redhead and her mom hide in the confession room as Krampus breaks into the church. Krampus puts his long, juicy tongue through the room, traces anything smelly like a GPS gadget, and licks Redhead's stinky feet, possibly because it smells good. But Mom stabs him to stop his fetish and tells Redhead to run her dirty body away. Unfortunately, Redhead ends up watching Krampus killing Mom before she runs away on smelly foot. Back to the teens, Ghost Babe goes to Nerd and wakes him up with her flashlight. She tries to seduce Nerd and eventually succeeds. But 2 minutes later, Babe starts acting weird and accuses Nerd of assaulting her with his nerdy hormones because she is no longer possessed now. Nerd doubts Babe, so he goes looking for Hunk. Back to Bald Wife, she calls up her landlord and asks for help with the changeling. He advises her to bring it back to the tree, so Bald Wife tries to convince the monster to follow her to the woods. It doesn't listen and attacks Bald Wife, so an intense battle follows. Luckily, she wins the fight and knocks down the changeling with her baseball bat. Back to Santa, he faces off against the remaining elf zombies in a fierce encounter, but gets injured in the process. Despite this, he refuses to give up and thrashes all the zombies in a brutal fashion. DJ suddenly pops up to tell us about an unfortunate incident at the mall, but doesn't give us any further details. Now, Bald Wife carries the changeling to her landlord and demands to have her son back. There are many other changelings in the area, but they don't attack her. That's when the landlord reveals that the changelings are scared of him, and then he goes on to scold the one that killed Cop. However, the landlord admits he doesn't know where their son is, so Bald Wife instinctively shoots and kills him. She uses this as bargaining power with the changelings, as she has now killed the person they hate the most. Much to her amazement, the changelings, being the real son, comes out of the tree, and he is happily united with his mom. Back to the teens, Babe comes across the ghost girl in a vision, where she's being forced to have an abortion. After this, Babe finds Nerd, who is devastated to see Hunk's rotten body. That's when it is revealed that the ghost girl possessed Babe to have sex with Nerd, so that she could get pregnant with Nerd's baby, as a way for the ghost girl to finally have a nerdy child of her own. Suddenly, the ghost girl appears, and uses her powers to hang Nerd against the wall, after which she kills him in cold blood. Babe is terrified by the ghost girl, who approaches her with the aborted child. However, the ghost girl lets Babe escape, after sensing the baby growing inside her. Back to Redhead, she runs towards her aunt's mansion and begs to be let inside, but nobody responds to her cries. Krampus shows up and rushes toward Redhead, but she acts fast and uses a rod to stab him through the neck. Redhead also spots some fuel next to her, so she pours it over Krampus and uses the lighter she stole to light him on fire and kill him. To her surprise, she learns that Krampus was actually the caretaker. Now, the aunt brings Redhead inside her mansion and reveals that the spirit of Krampus possessed the caretaker, not because of the broken figurine, but because the caretaker's heart became full of hatred after seeing her brother's actions. This makes Redhead angry because she figures that her aunt willingly kicked out her family in order to serve them to Krampus. With her own heart full of anger, Redhead transforms into Krampus and kills her aunt without hesitation. DJ continues to comment on the hostages on the mall, and then we see Santa looking for his wife. An anxious sequence follows, after which she shows herself, but she has also turned into a zombie. Zombie wife attacks Santa and causes the slash on his face that we saw at the beginning of the movie. Now Krampus finally shows himself and attacks Santa in a fight to the finish. A fierce battle follows, but Santa eventually gets the upper hand and is about to kill Krampus. However, Krampus starts begging for mercy, and that's when we learn a shocking twist. Santa is actually Grumpy, who is working part-time as a mall Santa and was hallucinating the entire situation with the zombies. It turns out that Grumpy is in the same mall that DJ was warning his listeners about, and Grumpy has killed all the hostages there, confusing them to be zombie elves. Even Krampus is revealed to be a mall manager, so Grumpy loses his mind. The cops show up to arrest Grumpy, but his mind is too far gone, so he tries to kill the mall manager, still believing him to be Krampus. The movie ends with the cops shooting Grumpy and finally ending his misery. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.